Hey everybody, Steve Butts here with IGN. I'm also with my close personal friend, Mitch Dyer.
This is not Rainbow Six Patriots.
Yeah, right?
Anyway. It's pretty cool anyway.
We're looking at this new game that took Ubisoft forever to actually tell us that it's called The Division. But this is The Division, people. Mitch, tell us what we're looking at here.
So this is an online action shooter, not an MMO.
Yeah,
Ubisoft Massive is coy about calling it an MMO. It's a role-playing game, first and foremost. The idea was to do a role-playing game with shooter elements in New York City following the collapse of the government, the collapse of society, and the unleashing of a very sinister but still mysterious human-made pandemic.
So it's not a massively multiplayer online game, but it is online and it is made by Massive.
Yes.
That's confusing.
It is. The name doesn't help, right?
And you're saying this is after the apocalypse.
So it's weird, right? It's not an apocalypse. It's like a post-anarchistic thing. There was no like event that devastated Earth. It's just society's gone mental. There's a total collapse of government, and when the game starts, when you start with your character, you get 3 days worth of supplies based on this whole idea of 9 meals to anarchy, where you have 3 days of supplies, food, water to survive, and after that you are essentially just scavenging for what you need to survive.
I was joking with Andrew Goldfarb. This is basically just like living in Brooklyn. Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
And then he got all indignant about it.
Right, because he's like, oh, I lived in New York for a long time.
Yeah, but then he realized that what I was saying was basically true, right?
Yeah, right.
So I do like the way this looks. I mean, there's tons of little details here, like the overturned paper boxes and just all the crap that's on the street. Not sure why they bother to show you that somebody is actually controlling this, but it looks good enough that it could be a pre-rendered cutscene. Maybe that's what they were thinking.
This is the next-gen engine that Massive has developed internally called Snowdrop.
And look at that smoke effect, or the steam coming up from the sewer right there. It's insane.
Perfect. With the lighting of the car, man, it's so nice. It's got a nice UI, too, just like clean on the side, subtle. You don't even notice it until you look for it.
Sure, and the haze effect as you look off on the bridges there in the distance is great. I mean, the depth of field here is just fantastic.
Look how far you can see and like the detail of everything, the rippling on those sheets. Everything is just so beautiful in this game.
So at this point we see there's a little gameplay element on the HUD there. I mean, we see sort of the icons there for his equipment, but we see that he's actually going somewhere.
I would assume that these people he's with are NPCs.
Right.
Not necessarily other players. Maybe they could be. I don't know if your gamer tag is, Megan or whatever her name is.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, they keep positioning this as an online shooter. I can't imagine that that's not part of the demo. And as we've seen with a game like Watch Dogs, which is also published and developed by Ubisoft, they're able to seamlessly integrate other players into a single-player-like experience.
Sure, I mean, maybe it's a Destiny situation where you could just be roaming around and suddenly, whoa, Steve's in my game, awesome, let's team up and take down the thugs.
Right. So we're seeing some interesting sort of HUD elements here. It's sort of like the biotic thing they had in Mass Effect, where it's like some of the things you're interacting with are meant to exist in the player's world, which I think is a nice touch.
This is very Splinter Cell-esque, right? Like you're slipping between cover. It looks very similar to Watch Dogs, very similar to Splinter Cell, but you do have those Clancy-esque gadgets. Like he's got this little seeker mine, and he had a whole array of other things in his inventory, and that plays into the class system, which is funny because there is no class system. There are no classes at all. You build.
Explain.
You build your own classes, right? So you say, I'm Steve. I love the MP5 and this gadget. I'm going to use that for this loadout. But you can just, on the fly, just jump into a menu and switch a class on the fly. So if I'm tanking and you're playing a tank, you might say, well, I want to stealth. I don't need to be another tank. So I could be, like this guy, getting all the aggro while you slip around behind.
And it looks like it's fairly relaxed in terms of the damaging. I mean, this is not a game like Rainbow Six where it's 1 or 2 shots and the guy's out.
Yeah.
You have a chance here to take a couple of hits, make a few mistakes, but it also means it's more difficult to take out the bad guys. I will say, if these are not human players, or if this is not meant to simulate a human versus human encounter, they seem super smart. I mean, they're flanking this guy, they're moving off to the left, getting behind cars, they're moving off to the right. So he finds himself caught in the crossfire. Now tell me about that thing.
That's just it's a gadget, right? It's a mine, but it's like a homing grenade almost. You throw it on the ground and it figures it out. It finds the nearest AI and blows them to pieces.
That is crazy.
Something else you can be paying attention to is there's a drone up here at the top of the screen, off screen.
Yeah,
He's off
I didn't notice that the first time.
That is a person. That's a person playing on their mobile device, flying around the field, targeting enemies and saying, hey, there's a dude over here, be aware. So at home, you could be sitting on your console while I'm training in to work or whatever. Maybe you're homesick that day. I don't know what you're doing. Skipping work, playing The Division.
Sure.
I can jump in your game as that drone, and that drone has its own skill tree. So it has its own progression separate from my character.
That's interesting. We saw very much the same thing in Watch Dogs, where there's another second screen experience for players playing on a mobile device that interacts with players who are playing in the more traditional console or PC format.
So this is a Tom Clancy game, Steve, but
but not Rainbow Six.
There's no Rainbow Six. There's and not just the game. The Rainbow Six Squadron does not exist anymore. Splinter Cells are gone.
You're breaking my heart, Mitch.
I know. But this is kind of a look at like what happens in the Clancyverse when those options are not available. You resort to these sleeper cells, that's who you play. So you're a sleeper cell, former army, police, fire department, whatever. And you get tapped and you get your supplies, and your goal is to kind of reinstate government, secure the people, make sure the world is safe. And that's kind of your goal in The Division.
And again, look at the level of detail in these environments. It's not just a room for the sake of having an interesting space to shoot guys. I mean, that's obviously one of the goals here, but just everything that they have on the walls and on the floors and on the desks and, you know, on the pegboards even.
Yeah.
It really looks like they took a lot of time making a level that feels like a real group of people live there and work there.
Yeah, and there were a lot of options here that we saw that they're not exploring, right? There's another hallway, probably some loot in there. Wherever you go is a logic. Like, if you need ammo, you're going to go to a logical space. You're not going to go to a school if you're like, I need bullets. You're going to go to a police station. If you need medicine, you're probably going to go to a hospital.
Right.
All of that stuff. So I can't really tell where they are now, but obviously there's some armaments that they have acquired in it.
But for you to be able to break into or not even break into, just walk into a police department and take a gun like that, things have obviously gone really wrong in this universe.
Right. I mean, look how scattered the world is. There's not a huge population outside. Maybe they're staying inside because they're afraid, or they've holed up underground for their gang or whatever.
Now, see, here we're going to see this classic thing that game demos are starting to do where, oh, look at this small, tiny experience you've been having lately.
Yep. Oh, man, there are people everywhere.
Right, and then suddenly it begins to pull back and reveal this gigantic
PvP.
world. It's a super common trick, but it's one that gets me every time.
It's effective, and it makes me really excited for The Division. Steve, we're going to see it at E3 this week.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, for all things Division and all things IGN and E3, keep it locked to IGN.